anybody from the public that would like to speak to come to the podium, we'd like to hear you. Ma'am, if you would like to speak, we'd love to hear you. You can stand right at that podium if that'll work for you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is...
Don't worry, it's correct. It's for the feed. Real close to your mouth.
My name is Beulah Scott, and I live at 4242 Everett Road in 8 Mile, Alabama, 36613. This month, my bill was $97, but that's not a 2-month bill, just 1 month bill. I paid last month, but they said on the meter, they said that I had a water leak somewhere. So I said, well, where is the water leak? And they could not tell me where the water leak was, but they said it corrected itself. Now, we didn't have no plumber out there to check because we did not know that there was a water leak. And yet they saying that I got to pay $900 and some. Well, I just left and paid my water bill, and I paid $65 plus the $15 that we're supposed to pay, which came to $79 something. And I think that this is very much wrong because how is it possible? We at home, they said, maybe you had somebody was stealing water. I'm at home every day, and my husband, he's on dialysis. And there's no way that I wasn't there to see that they can steal and get some water somewhere. And my property is fenced in. And I said, no, I just don't understand what's happening. We had never had that problem before. And I know that people was complaining, be saying that they had problems a long time ago. But I never had no problem. My bill was never $1,000. My bill was in the normal range. But when they talked about now that that I got to pay $900 and some, but she, when I went there to the board just now, she allowed me to pay the $65 that I usually pay, plus the $15, and that was it. But still, what's going to happen with that bill which says $900 and some? I told her I do not agree with it. Somebody was lying somewhere, and I will not sign no paper saying that this is correct. Because how in the world that you can tell me that somebody, and it has to be the water people, has to cut your water on and cut it off. And she said, the water is fine now. I said, how come it's fine now? That is my problem.
Thank you, Ms. Scott. I appreciate you sharing that. John, do you feel like you need to respond to it immediately, or?
No, I think I do have your address, and I'll take it back to our customer service group and so we can do, okay?
Thank you, Ms. Scott. Thank you very much for your time. That's John Young, the receiver.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you. Everett Road. Thank you. Anyone else from the public wish to speak? All right, well, we'll get started. If you find that as the presentations occur and some of what is said, it prompts questions in your mind, by all means, come to the podium at the end. this point, I'd like to turn it over to John Young, the receiver for the Pritchard Waterworks and Sewer Board. He's been busy, quite a few different things of late, and he's going to introduce you to our presenters and provide some updates. So, John, would you, thank you. Severia, would you open us in prayer, please, for a moment of reflection? Thank you, ma'am.
Father God, in the name of Jesus, we come before you. We come before you. We're grateful we come before you. Honest. Thanking you for being God and God all by yourself. Thank you for your Son, Jesus. Thank you for the precious Holy Ghost. Thank you, Father God, in the name of Jesus, as you continue to look beyond our thoughts and see our needs. Thank you for this meeting. Thank you for divine order. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Amen.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay.
Do you want to come here or do you want to work over there?
I'll work. Well, I'll come up front. Sure. Why not? Why not? Why not? So what I'd like to just kick off the meeting with an update of a number of things that we've done over the last couple of meetings, so everybody understands where we are in several areas. First, the reports and the information we've been putting together. The asset management report, which was presented at the last meeting, which helped define how much money we need to spend on the capital projects over the next 20 years, which is about $20 million a year. That has been completed. It's a very large report. I could not send it to the advisory council, but it's on the Fix Pritchard Water website for access, anybody who needs it.
Turn the fan off.
Yeah, turn.
Try to yell more.
Okay. Okay, so what I said is we did an asset management study which helps define how much money we need to spend on improvements to the system over the next 20 years, which is about $20 million a year. That study has been completed. It was required by ADEM to meet our consent order, and it's on the Fix Pritchard Water website. Okay, it's a very long report. The other report that we presented at our last meeting was a source of supply study where we analyzed what would be the most cost-effective long-term water source for Pritchard. We looked at, obviously, Moz. We looked at surface water and a surface water treatment plant, and we looked at wells. And the conclusion there was that wells could be cost-effective, but right now ADEM is not allowing us to get a drilling permit until we fix some of the problems within the system. That report will be done by the end of this month. It's going to be a little bit shorter. I'll be able to send it to everybody on the advisory council, and we will post it on fixpritchardwater.com. Okay, so that's the second thing. The third thing is, you might remember a couple of meetings ago we had a presentation on affordability, and we also had a presentation on putting together a customer assistance program to help those that had problems paying their bills. That work is continuing. It probably won't be done until the middle of the middle of July. One of the things we need to talk about is, do we want to have a presentation of that report? I will tell you right now, the conclusions are not different from what you've heard before. It concludes that the water right now, and the water rates right now within the system are at or above affordability levels, which we already know that. It also concludes that to fund a customer assistance program, we're not going to be able to use existing customers. A lot of communities, they fund their customer assistance programs by charging some customers who can afford it a little bit more to support customers who can't. We really don't have that type of customer base here in Pritchard and Chickasaw, so we're probably going to have to find external sources, and I know some of the advisory council is working on those external sources. So that report will be done in mid-July. And then the final report, and we're going to talk about that today, is the alternatives analysis, which is due to both the courts and to ADEM by the end of July. And that'll be one of the primary focuses of the meeting here today, to talk about where we are on the alternatives analysis. we've received a lot of ADEM grant money to do some projects, and I'll give you an update on that. There are 4 projects that ADEM has funded through grant funds, one of which is doing much needed improvement works on all of our water tanks. The design is basically done on that. We'll be going out to bid probably within the next 2 weeks to get pricing in. And what you'll see on 4 of the tanks within the system, you'll see new paint jobs both internally and externally, and other improvements that protect public health. Those will be done by the end of this year. The one tank will actually be brought down because it serves no purpose, and that's the tank at the office right now. That'll be demolished, but it'll probably be the first part of next year. So that project is moving forward. That's about a $4 million project. We have a pipeline project, which is to replace 9 miles of pipe on Lovejoy Loop, with some of the oldest pipe within the system. The design has been initiated on that. We had a kickoff meeting for that design last month. The design will probably be done toward the end of the year. To do these pipeline projects in some of these areas takes a lot of what we call survey work. You have to identify where all the other utilities are, so when you design your pipeline, you don't hit the other utilities. So that's a big part of this work. Design will be done this year, and construction will start in the spring of next year. And that's a critical project because we know a lot of the leakage is on that Lovejoy Loop, and if you were around within the last couple of weeks, we had some pretty incredible breaks on those lines that we know need fixing. We have a project on our wastewater treatment plant, the Morris Wastewater Treatment Plant. Again, that's also under a consent order for some improvements. The work being done there is on what we call the headworks of a plant, or is the front end of the plant. As the sewage comes in, it gets screened and grit is removed before it goes to the rest of the treatment process. What we have at the plant right now doesn't work, and so that there's a project to improve them. That design is also started, and we will start construction probably in mid-2025. It's a little more complicated design, but we will be done before the end of 2026. And then the final project is putting instrumentation and controls at our 29 pumping stations on the wastewater side. That one we haven't started yet. We only have so much capacity right now, but we'll get that started hopefully within the next couple of months and move forward with that. So any questions on the reports we're doing or the projects we're moving forward with grant funds? We're also obviously spending money to just fix breaks and overflows and things like that on a constant basis. But they're the 4 big projects that fortunately we'll probably get about $20 million from ADEM to do those, which is a gift from heaven, let me tell you. That type of grant money that the customers don't have to pay for.
Is there any status on the new grant money that you're chasing?
We are chasing it. Unfortunately, there's some hooks to a lot of the grant money. The Corps of Engineers has grant money available, but unfortunately, you have to do a 25% match, and we don't have 25% to match. There's other funding from the federal government, WIFIA funding, that requires 49%. So I'm going to we have some people here today who have really helped me and can help us through the process here. But there are other sources of funding out there, but we have not been successful in landing any of them yet. But we're looking. We're looking. Yes?
Mr. Chairman, do you have a court date for your final report to Judge Young?
So the report will go in no later than July 31. So the report that goes to the court will be the 4 reports I've just talked about: the asset management report, the source of supply report, the affordability report, and the alternatives analysis report, and then a general summary of those reports that kind of goes on top of all that with a recommendation of how we feel Pritchard ought to move forward in the future, what the structure should be, what the governance should be, what the operations should be. So that's July 31. And one of the things I want to ask the group at the end of this meeting, we only have one additional meeting scheduled between now and when that report is due. And if we think we might need 1 or 2 additional meetings, we need to talk about that. So let's not leave before we talk about how we get from here to the July 31 report. Okay? Okay. So the most critical part, in my mind, we've done a lot of the, what I'll call the nuts and bolt work. We've figured out how much money we need to spend to do improvements. We've figured out, where we are on the affordability scale. We've figured out what our source of supply ought to be in the future. Now we have the big decision on what should Pritchard Water look like as we move forward into the future, and that's the alternatives analysis. Initially, if you remember my very confusing matrix that I put up that nobody seemed to understand, initially we had tons of alternatives on who was going to run the system, who was going to operate the system, how they were going to govern the system, what the source of supply is going to be. What we have done over the last 6 weeks is we've talked to the city of Pritchard, we've talked to the city of Chickasaw, we've talked to Moz, we've gotten feedback from all of the options. Okay, so for instance, the city of Pritchard got back to us and said, we're not interested in city ownership of the system. We throw all of our weight behind the water board and the concession model. Okay, so we're not going to be evaluating the city of Pritchard's ownership of the system. That went off the list. We got a different response from the city of Chickasaw. They say, we would like to own our system. We already own the wastewater system. We feel we can operate the water system. And if that doesn't work, we can live with maybe Moz providing us water and potentially even owning the system. But we have no interest in the concession at all. Okay? So we got two totally different responses. The water board is obviously supporting the water board, which I'll call status quo returning with the concession model. And Moz, who I meet with frequently, is still basically doing due diligence and have not committed to be part of the solution here yet. Okay? So right now we have, I say, only 3 alternatives we have to look at. There might be a fourth, but really 3. One is what I'll call status quo. The water board goes back into place with the concession. Secondly, Moz comes in and owns the system and operates the system. Or we do this kind of hybrid where for the Pritchard portion of the system, city of Pritchard, the water board comes back in with the concession, and the city of Chickasaw owns their part of the system, and we split the 2 systems. And you can do that because Chickasaw has their own connections with Moz and has their own storage tank. So they're the 3 primary options we're looking at right now. We started with 50 options, and we're down only to 3. And okay, there's what I'll call, let's call it the status, return to status quo, which is the water board with the concession. Okay, the second one is Moz having an ownership of the system and operating the system, and the third is the water board is responsible through the concession for the city of Pritchard's portion of the system, and the city of Chickasaw owns their part of the system and runs it themselves. Okay, the third one is, okay, we have two cities. We have Pritchard and Chickasaw. The city of Pritchard has said we have no interest in owning and operating our portion of the system. It was made by the council. Passed a resolution supporting, putting all their weight behind the water board and the concession. Okay? City of Chickasaw said basically directly the opposite. We are interested in owning and operating our portion of the system. We have no interest in the concession. And, if that doesn't work, maybe we might be interested in Moz providing us water.
I got it. I just didn't understand. Once you said the board, I didn't know which water board
Okay.
had as a reference. I got it.
Okay. So there's those 3. There might be another option which you might want to talk about later, but they're the 3 that we're looking at.
Not a detailed question because I don't want to go down the rabbit hole. But on the third option, which is a split option, these systems are currently integrated today, so there would be a cost to separate them.
There would be a cost to provide valves in critical areas. It's not as bad as you might think just because of the 7 interconnections there with Moss. A couple of them go directly into Chickasaw, and we have 4 storage tanks, one of which is in Chickasaw. So there would be a cost. No, it's nowhere close to the, when you're talking about needing to spend $20 million a year for the next 20 years because of the failure of the infrastructure in the system, it's very, very small compared to that.
So, let me understand, so you're saying in that second option where Chickasaw would have their portion,
That's the third option.
okay, the third option. You're saying that they then would pay for the infrastructure that Pritchard Water currently owns to Pritchard
Yeah.
Water?
They would have to purchase and get the board to agree to the purchase of the system from the water board. Yes. Yep.
And that infrastructure consists of,
Hmm?
what particular infrastructure is that consisting of?
It would be consisting of, well, they already own the wastewater system with and operated in Chickasaw. It would be the, it would,
That Pritchard currently owns?
no, no. Chickasaw currently owns and operates their own wastewater system. So it would be the water system that's in Chickasaw. It would be the water pipes, the water tank, the interconnections. Okay? Yeah.
So now, the people that's living in Pritchard, they can expect the bill might be $2,000 and you don't even know.
Let me get into that. That's a great question.
That's my goal.
I
I know that I did not use $1,000 worth of water.
yeah.
So
Okay.
that's where I want.
So the next step is we have these alternatives, is to evaluate them and decide what's best for the customers of Pritchard and Chickasaw. And when we say so we need to have certain evaluation criteria that we're going to use to figure out what the best option is. This is a really, really, really important decision. And I frankly, we've done a lot of the foundational work necessary to make this decision, and I'm comfortable as and the decision falls on me. I'm the receiver, and the courts have required me to do this. I'm comfortable with that, but this is so important. I felt that we ought to have another set of eyes in helping us through the process here. And so who we've brought today is an organization called Moonshot Missions. And Moonshot Missions is a nonprofit, and they'll go through who they are. But they have a number of very experienced experts working for them on water and wastewater systems. And they are funded by EPA. It costs us nothing for that expertise. And I've decided that I want them and another set of eyes to look at this. So they're going to come up here and talk a little bit about who they are. They're going to talk about the alternatives I've just presented, and they're going to talk about the evaluation criteria that we're going to use to evaluate which is the best option. And it'll include water rates, it'll include public health protection, and a number of other things. So Andy, you want to come on up? And this is Andy from Moonshot Missions.
Yeah, sorry. I didn't know. Okay, I was like, something didn't seem right. Yeah. Everybody including myself. Is that? Yeah, that feels good. Feels good. Let me get this. I can turn around. Okay, cool. Yep. All right. Then. I'll put this over here so I can change The slides. Okay. Hello, everyone. Hello. Really great to be here with you all. As John said, my name is Andy Kester. I'm from a nonprofit called Moonshot Missions. I first need to say you might have already had some contact with one of my colleagues, Anastasia. I know she's been at these meetings for the last 3 or 4 months. And she wasn't able to make this one because she just had her baby last week, and so yeah. So I'm pinch hitting for Anastasia today. Otherwise, this would be her presentation. But so as John said, today's topics. Okay, so today's topics is that I'm going to talk about Moonshot Missions, who we are, our work, and our mission. I'm going to be diving into what our role is. And as John mentioned, our role is going to be completing this alternatives analysis or performing the alternatives analysis. And the different alternatives, as you all have been talking about, are ownership, governance, operations, and source of supply. As we know, and as John has talked about, the source of water supply has been whittled down now to, Moz is going to be the water provider. And then once we go through those alternatives, then I'm going to present some of the draft criteria that we're proposing to do our evaluation. We will open it up for you just to say, is this right? Are we missing anything? And give that opportunity for any sort of feedback regarding the criteria that we chose. And then we're going to talk about next steps. And so, as John mentioned, I have another slide that talks about this. We are here funded by the EPA through a program, and we are completely neutral. As John mentioned, we're not being paid by the Pritchard or by John. We are completely neutral, and this was an opportunity that the EPA presented to Moonshot as a really good opportunity because it really ties into our mission that I will talk about to see what we could do for you all here in Pritchard. And so we absolutely took this opportunity because this is, what we are here to do is to help communities just like yours. Okay, so as I said, Moonshot and our missions. We are here to help communities deliver the clean and safe and affordable water to your communities. We are committed to bringing environmental justice and social justice to communities just like yours within the water sector. We've been working with communities all across the country that I'll show you here. The next slide. What I like to say, and it's in our vision statement, is that we like to be a catalyst to bring this transformative change to your infrastructure and to your operations that you would need. We have a very experienced background of staff that I'll be able to show you a bit more about. We've been through all aspects of how to run a water utility, how to upgrade a water utility, how to make sure you have the right technical, managerial, and financial capacities to run that utility. We each come with a little bit of different types of experiences as well, and so that is why the EPA gave us this opportunity and funded us to do this opportunity to help communities just like yours. So Moonshot was started in 2019, and since 2019 we have grown and our impact has grown. We have, as part of our 2023 annual report, we, over the course of those few years, we have touched over 108 different communities in 34 states, two territories, and across all 10 EPA regions. We have a methodology on how we do our work, and we dubbed it our Moonshot method.
And so we come in and we listen. We listen to you. We practice what we call humble listening. We go into a community, we try to learn and meet them where they're at with the current issues they have. Once we listen and we learn, then we go out and visit the system, and we do site assessments, and we hear from the operators. I love talking to the operators one-on-one. We want to hear what's going on and what are those major issues that you're having from that technical, managerial, financial capacity. That's a term you're going to hear a lot in the water sector. The state actually has a law, or it's actually coming from the federal rule, the Safe Drinking Water Act, is that a water system has to not only just have the technical, but the managerial and financial capacities to make sure that you have a sustainable water utility. And so you'll hear that term, quite often, TMF, and it's referenced, and John has referenced it. And so we have the Moonshot Method. Once we get these projects identified, and then we help that community prioritize those projects, and then we get access to funding, or we try to get access from funding. We don't have the funding, but as John mentioned, there is some funding out there with federal funding, with state funding, and there's some other different opportunities. Now that's like Moonshot, kind of doing that end-to-end type of technical assistance. We do also do these like real targeted type projects, and this is an example of one of those where we've been asked to look at performing this alternative analysis to have an independent look at this, for you all. And so that is our role here today. So now let me quickly talk to you about this program called the National EFC, EFC standing for Environmental Finance Center. So as part of the recent bipartisan infrastructure law that was passed a couple years ago, the EPA, as part of that program, created what they called the Water TA program and the National Environmental Finance Center program. So they, in essence, created 29 different entities. Some of them already existed, similar to Moonshot in that we're trying to help communities get access to some of the funding. And so when that bipartisan infrastructure law was passed, the way that money gets to communities is by the federal government sending, and the EPA sending it to the different states to what they call the State Revolving Fund. But to get access to that money is a process. It's a bureaucratic process that you have to go through. Under-resourced communities like yourself, wouldn't have that capacity, they need help getting access to that funding. And historically, some of the most under-resourced communities have not been able to access it. And so the EPA, as part of this, created this EFC program. And in this EFC program, entities like Moonshot, we're a national EFC, so we help communities all across the country help get access to some of that SRF money. So that in the future, that could also be a way that Moonshot can stay engaged with your community as well. So real quick, our team, this is our Pritchard team that we've had working on this project, but we come with, my colleague Henderson Brown, who's here with me as well. We come with, executive experience, legal experience. Myself, I have over 20 years of operations and management of water utilities, and I also was a state regulator. When I lived out in Arizona, I regulated what they call the Surface Water Protection Program. So I had that experience on what it's like on the other side of that, being the regulator working with communities. And then we have, executives and directors of utilities all across the country and in New Jersey, in Portland, like Andy Cricken in New Jersey and Mike Sturr in Portland. So, and we have new engineers, that are on our staff. So we're executives, we're operators, we're engineers, we're finance staff. We try to bring everything that you would need to build to help you with your utility. And of course, Anastasia, as I mentioned before, she's been working with you all the most, and she is on maternity right now, but will be back. So then our role. our role is in this community engagement. Anastasia has been very active with you all. She's attended these meetings, so to help us, make sure that we are doing that humble listening, make sure that we're listening, and it helps us, feed the types of analysis we're going to do. And then, but the biggest role in what we're here right now is this alternatives analysis, utility ownership, governance, and operations analysis. And then after this analysis gets done, then John needs to present that to the judge, as he's already mentioned, and then that chosen alternative needs to go through that full TMF capacity that I already described. And so we don't yet know how Moonshot would be involved in that, or if we need to be involved in that, but that's the next step that John needs to take. Okay, so now we'll get to the meat of the matter, and this is something that you all have been, and I'm sorry if I'm blocking you. This is something that has been discussed now for the last 3 or 4 months, and I gotta say, this process of getting this whittled down to these 3 options, Anastasia had a spreadsheet that I think was 2 pages long and we were whittling it down. When John would provide us more information about, hey, Chickasaw, council voted on this, or Pritchard's just let us know that they, had no interest in running their water system. Or when we heard last month when Hazen and Sawyer presented that, with the source of supply study that they did, the water source of supply, that Mawes right now is the only option, because the groundwater option was, 2040, or if when, Pritchard has that right TMF capacity to be able to get those drilling permits. And so you all maybe, the way John presented it was, the status quo option was first, and so right now you can kind of switch that. But alternative 1 on this chart is Mawes ownership over Pritchard and Chickasaw, and governance Mawes, operations Mawes, water supply is coming from Mawes. Option 2 or alternative 2 is Pritchard over the Pritchard and Chickasaw systems. It's in essence the status quo option with the concession agreement that John's been talking about. And then option 3, this hybrid approach. And so you see how we have the 3, they're kind of colored, 1, 2, and 3, with 3 being, the type of hybrid approach. And then we had that little asterisk in there that I already talked about, the potential long-term, option to where there could be a groundwater system.
Couldn't that asterisk be on option 3 for the Chickasaw component as well? Don't they have well potential?
Was Chickasaw in that potential? Would option 3 also have the asterisk in that Chickasaw would put their own groundwater system in?
It does, but if Chickasaw was on their own, and they proved their TMF capacity, if they got to it quicker than the Pritchard system, they potentially could go for groundwater a little bit sooner.
It's not a question of whether they're interested or not. It's a question, is it a viable option?
Yeah.
And I believe it is a viable option
Yeah.
based on the plots of where the wells are, so that they could actually goal themselves to a lower cost if they wanted to away from Mawes in the future.
Right, and they, like I said, they may be able to do it even quicker than Pritchard because, they may be getting their arms around the TMF capacity issues quicker.
But did they indicate that they was interested in going that far with it?
The feedback that I've gotten, and I don't know if you want to speak for them, but the feedback I've gotten really focused on ownership and operation. But I would say any utility wants to find the cheapest way to do things. And if it's less expensive to do groundwater, and we find it is competitive, then clearly they'd want to move in that direction. TMF capacity is technical, management, and financial capacity. One of the reasons we can't move forward with groundwater right now within the system is ADEM will not give us a drilling permit until we get our arms around the TMF issues associated with Pritchard, one of which is leakage, water theft, management, governance, all these things, and the financial situation. They will not give us a drilling permit until we get that addressed.
Will they give resources to address it?
We
Well,
can't hear you.
will they give resources to address it? Well, they've already given us 20 million to start down that process. But it's going to be a challenge. It's going to be a challenge.
Okay, so this here was trying to make it a little bit easier of a read because I've been watching the live streams with the infamous Matrix there, John. Okay, so those were the options. Now, these are the evaluation criteria that are going to be considered within those three different alternatives. The number one, and this should go out without saying, but the number one mission of any water utility is to make sure that we are protecting public health and the environment. Everything we do, water being this precious resource, and how it's life sustaining, as Eric was saying in the rate discussion a couple months ago. And so any option needs to make sure that we are protecting human health and the environment. This is why I'm here. Like, when I started working right out of college, I started working for at a surface water treatment plant. I'm from St. Louis, Missouri. We were treating the Mississippi River right out of college, and then I suddenly realized the importance of having that clean water coming out of your tap. And then I also realized how much work and how much investment that it takes to do that, and how much it goes in behind the scenes to make sure that everybody feels comfortable when they turn on that tap, that it's delivering the clean and safe water. I would go out in communities in East St. Louis, Illinois, Centerville, Illinois, and some of these communities, and go to people's homes, take samples, and do that kind of work just to make sure that we were delivering that. So for us, we anticipate some of those future options will be operating at a level to where you will have that protection. Right now, the water source is good. There's no violations that we've seen on the drinking water side. Really, the biggest issue right now is there is a potential cross-connection control program that you worry about any sort of other types of chemicals getting into the water from an industrial commercial building. But there's a program that's being put in place with that. But the biggest issue is some of the SSOs, the sanitary sewer overflows that are existing, and some backups, sewage backups that are occurring. So then the criteria then would look at that number of SSOs. How do we minimize that, or what option minimize that the greatest? But it's within this time frame as well, and so that's why I included time to get to environmental compliance. So we all know there's a lot of work to get done to make sure that we're hitting this North Star, and so we're going to be looking at the time as well as a component. And then reliability of water supply is a criteria that would be evaluated, and then of course emergency preparedness. How is that ownership, governance, operations option, how are they at making sure that they are doing the appropriate emergency preparedness that could happen? You think about how you communicate that, or how are you set up to handle if there's a major power fail with a hurricane, like some of those things. The utility always needs to be evaluating how they're going to handle an emergency response, and is that infrastructure set up to do that? So I will stop there and and just get your quick input from the council, and then I'll go to the next one. Like, if there's any questions on that, or if you're because this is the North Star. This is what we're trying to achieve here, right? But wanted to see if you had any questions, or if John, you had any thoughts.
We know we're catching everybody a little cold here. You haven't seen these, but there's going to be 4 criteria here, and we thought we would stop after each one. If you have any thoughts immediate on things we're missing regarding public health and the environment, fine. We'll send everybody a copy of this presentation, and over the next week or so, if you see something that we're missing, that's fine too. But we want to give everybody an opportunity, very briefly, if there's something obvious that we're missing under that public health category, as Andy said, public health environmental protection is always number one. And so some of this, as we do this assessment, some things can be very objective, things we can quantify, of the concession in the water board against WAS, for instance. Some are going to be somewhat subjective. And so when we ask you, are there other criteria that we're missing, it could be very objective or very subjective.
Also, the presentation he's making is on the website now.
Oh, great. Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Now, regardless of what entity take over the Pritchard Water and Sewer, the system, they would still be responsible for the sewage aspect of it, not only just the water. They would be taking on total responsibility.
Yeah. So that's why under the evaluation criteria, we have sewage overflows, we have wastewater quality. So it's an assessment on both water and wastewater.
Certainly, the evaluation criteria is all standards that it needs to be. The question I have is, if we're looking at regulatory compliance, and if ADM has had regulatory compliance over all of these years, how did we get into this deplorable condition in which we find ourselves?
I'll take that one.
And that's, if ADM can comply, can regulate that, there cannot be, what's the only thing we can do? Remember, you said ADM will not allow.
Well, ADM will not allow us to get a drilling permit for the ground wells until we meet the TMF capacity. There's issues around water quality compliance, and then there are issues around this TMF capacity. So,
Whatever the issues are,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter what the issues are.
well, I've always been frank with you guys, and I'll be frank right now.
If, I'm simply saying, if we have the sort of regulatory standard now that says we cannot have our own drilling, why have we not have regulatory compliance standards that would have kept Pritchard from getting into the deplorable condition that it's in?
Okay, well, I'll try to answer that question if you want me to.
Let me say this. I looked very closely at the evaluation that Hazen did, and I was appalled that in certain places, what was the expected standard, I would just say, if it was expected that we would have 3 leaks a year, Pritchard had 100. To me, that's appalling, that any regulatory agency would allow that to happen. And it's not fair to the people who have to suffer the consequences of that.
Well, so ADEM can regulate, ADEM cannot make you do things. They can fine you, they can regulate you, they can issue consent orders to you, but they cannot physically go out and do it. And we have a history here of ignoring compliance.
I understand that. So it appears that there needs to be some change in the manner of regulatory compliance. To me, regulatory compliance means that I can make you do it.
And can, by law, they could have taken them to court or whatever the other legal
I'm
things
simply
could
saying they're
have taken place.
complying
They
now.
did not go that far.
Right, but
They
they
did not.
but they did fine Pritchard.
It's not
To
that
some
we're not.
They did.
I'm not attacking you. I'm not attacking anything. I'm attacking a system
By which, yeah.
that has such little compliance that it allows a system to get into that condition.
Correct.
You say they could find us. What if they find us and they don't do it? The citizens are the people who are suffering.
Absolutely. And by not doing the things you need to do to comply continually, you fall far and far behind on the infrastructure needs. Yeah,
1,000%.
yeah,
There's
yeah.
such thing.
Okay.
I agree with that. The problem is that's going to give these people, like this lady just came here today. I can't envision anything that's going to give us any economy of scale. Right.
There's no silver bullet. There is no silver bullet here that is going to be the solution. It's going to be a challenge regardless of which option we pick. You're absolutely right.
I did not mean that I got emotional.
No, absolutely, absolutely.
I have a question, or I have something that I think should be added
Okay.
to the criteria.
Wonderful.
We have had multiple occasions that we've had sewage overflow.
Mm-hmm.
So where is the remediation, I think, to the environment, like to Chickasaw Creek or 8 Mile Creek, where we've had these spills? In order to me, we've got to do some remediation work
Mm-hmm.
in order to get back into a position to where we can meet the TMFs that they're talking about. And so I think that in our evaluation criteria, we need to have remediation as a part of that.
Go for it.
Okay, so understand what the evaluation criteria is for. It's for to assess the three alternatives. It's saying who of those three would be best in controlling sewer overflows, improving water quality. We're not going to come up with what the plan is, but who of the three alternatives could best move forward with expertise and resources and all to solve it.
Okay, I understand that, but I'm saying they should be able to address remediation.
Absolutely.
So
And
that's what
yeah.
I'm saying,
Okay.
that
And then
needs to be
part of this emergency preparedness, like every municipality that runs a wastewater system, they also have to have what they call an SSO response plan. Moonshot, when we go out and look at different, evaluate different communities' managerial capacities, we look at that. Like if there is an SSO and that SSO overflows into a waterway or it does not, but there's still some aspects of how you're going to clean that up, and so there is a what they call an SSO response plan. Yeah. But then we would evaluate like the alternative we would be looking at, does that entity, have an do they have an SSO response plan, or do they have emergency repair response plans to where they would prevent that sort of issue from getting into a stream or a water. So or if there was any sort of issues that happen where you get backups into people's homes, what is their response to that as well?
May I say something, please? I'd like to respond to the doctor here because she's absolutely correct, and it is appalling. But I think that we have to recognize the elephant in the room, because if we want to go and keep pitty-patting around and going around it, then we're going to come. That's why we're in the position that we're in now. Now, see, with 80, if we were allowed, you can go to 80, you can get on 80 and some different. That almost that young lady did. And they were talking to me. And they have what you say, like they told us. They're not going to do anything. They're not going to make us do anything. What they will do is they have what you call a consent decree. But I believe we're still involved in that. I don't know whether we're still, John, or not. But that's how I got on board back in 2004. And the DA's office was involved. So it's not like what we have and what we're dealing with now is the lack of responsibility with the board that was on a previous or whatever. Like the receiver said, excuse me, the receiver said we can't afford it. This will start yesterday.
Yep.
This is an ongoing
Gotcha.
problem. We have SSO and the sewage is coming up out of the street, and that just started yesterday. And the boards knew about this problem, but they chose not to do anything about it. And that's why ADM put us under a consent decree. If that had not happened, we wouldn't be where we are now. And the board still did not do anything about it. And that's why it went also in court in regards to the debt and all. And we were put under receivership, where now everything is being broken down to us, item by item, brick by brick, so we can be intelligent about it and do something about it at this point.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's going on.
Thank you.
I thoroughly agree with you. I just think we should have
Yeah. Oh, there'll be plenty of opportunity to provide more input, as John said, afterwards as well. But this is all good input. Thank you. Cost and affordability is another criteria, that like a main category of criteria, and this is a really big one. So some of the options we're going to look at, again, looking at it from the perspective, which of those alternatives are going to be able to, bring, grant opportunities, for example. Grants are you've already, as John said, $20 million from ADEM. Those are so important, because then that's money that you don't have to pay back, right? Obviously. Another criteria within this cost and affordability is going to be what we're calling the cost of borrowing capital. And going back to what I was talking about with the EPA and the bipartisan infrastructure law, giving money to the states, and then that goes into the state revolving fund. That program, not only does that program give what they call principal forgiveness or grants, but if you don't get that, it gives low interest loans, 1.5, 3%, 2%, really low interest loans. That's the real trademark of that. And so under those different options, those different alternatives, which one would have the most access to get to the lowest interest rates that you need? Because there's a lot of capital that needs to be invested, as the Hazen and Sawyer report mentioned, $20 million over the next 20 years. So the big criteria is which one of those alternatives is going to be able to get the cheapest interest rate, or the lowest interest rate, I should say. And then the cost of operations and maintenance. And this is not only the cost of just having an operator going out there and flushing your water hydrants, or turning on changing your water meter, or going out and doing main replacements. You got to think complete operations and maintenance, the billing department, the customer service department, any sort of HR that you need, human resources department to run a utility, run that business. Which one of those options is going to be able to provide the most beneficial option to the Pritchard residents? And then rates is a big part of that. We've already heard from Eric and from John that the rates, there's going to be a cost of service study that's going to happen after John submits this final alternative, and there you're really going to find out what that rate structure is going to be. And then there would be a way to look at that if there would be any difference between the alternatives as it relates to rates. And then of those different options, which one would provide the best opportunity to have more affordability or assistance programs? So that then within cost and affordability, those are some of the generic criteria that we're going to be looking at. And like John said, some of it, like some of these are going to be would be quantitative. We could look at the options that are on table and see which ones would potentially be able to get the lowest rates. And then we'll be looking at some of that other criteria, as we build out our analysis. Last two, and then we can, there's another discussion. Yep. And then management experience and capacity. What is the transparency of that ownership and governance team? Is there access to the important decisions that are being made, as it relates to the $20 million per year capital, for example? Is that going to be, transparent? Are the budgets going to be transparent? Are they going to be available for you all to read? Are you going to know what are those operations and management costs? What are those capital costs? There's a certain amount of transparency that a public utility would give to that community. We'll be looking at that options and the experience of the team that those different groups would bring. What is their management experience? What is their experience in delivering a $20 million per year capital program? That's a lot. What sort of experience do they have with that? And then lastly, and then we can open it up, is the community impacts. We know this is a big one. Like, what local representation and community involvement would be there with those different ownership governance options. Would there be the job retention? You know, would jobs still be retained, the ones that we have that you all have now? And what are those opportunities? Would these different alternatives bring new opportunities for new jobs to your area? And then customer satisfaction. How quickly are they replying to, you know, a customer complaint as it relates to a leakage on their water meter or their bill? Or how quickly are they giving out information when, you know, they're doing key maintenance to your water system? You know I used to always have to put when we would flush our water mains in our water distribution system, we put the signs out there to let people know we're doing that flushing, so that, you know, if you had any discolored water, you know, those kind of things. How do you handle those sorts of customer inquiries, and are you delivering on, you know, the key, you know, customer satisfaction? So, John, with that, we can, if there was any other comments associated with those. Well, it's due by the end of July.
Yeah, so the hope is that Moonshot will do their thing. And when I say do their thing, I'll be involved with it and you guys will be involved with it, but have something done by the middle of July. So that gives us 2 weeks to take a look at all 4 of these reports and package them up with a specific recommendation that I need to make as a receiver.
Roughly 5 to 6 weeks before our deadline. They got 3 weeks to finish this up, so we've got 2 to 3 weeks to get it in implementation.
Yeah, 2 weeks to put it in shape that it needs to get submitted to both the courts and to ADEM. This is required both under our consent order and under our receiver order to submit an alternatives analysis. It's called a draft master plan under the receiver order. It's called an alternatives analysis under the ADEM order, but essentially it's the same thing. And the steps after that are, we'll submit it to both ADEM and to the courts. The courts might want to have public hearings on it. ADEM may want to have public hearings on it, but ultimately they'll get back to us with their thoughts on the recommendation. Then the next step after that is we need to do this infamous TMF capacity analysis, where the selected alternative will do a kind of a deeper dive and sharpen their pencil and get a better idea what the actual costs are going to be. And then we will do what was called a cost to service rate study to see where rates would need to be a sustainable utility. Now, I will tell you right now that I've done this in multiple locations in Pritchard-type communities, and the results will be rates cannot go high enough to produce a sustainable utility. And I've told ADEM that, and I've told the courts that already. So unless we get a ton of grant money, we're not going to have a sustainable solution. But that doesn't mean we don't move forward with the solution. You move forward with the best solution, whether it's sustainable or not. Yeah. All you, Dr. Morris.
With grant monies, are they all competitive writing, or are there entitlements based on certain criteria?
There's a process you need to go through. Moonshot talked about how they assist some communities in getting that. I actually did it myself for Pritchard to get to $20 million.
I understand that. My question is, from the granting agency,
Yeah.
are there any regulations that the people can put on their laws that give communities like Pritchard entitlements of the grants, not necessarily competitive writing for grants? If Pritchard's people can't even manage a thing, they don't have any grants writers.
Yeah, and so one of the things he has, I think it was the second choice here, was the cost of capital. And the more grant money you get, the lower your cost of capital is going to be. So we're going to look at which entity can write grant stuff better, which can go in and get SRF money better to reduce the cost of capital.
And my question is, can we ask EPA, ADEM, or whoever to aside, or we can go back to the legislation. We need, when we were talking about capabilities that you have of managing and all of that stuff. Obviously, there has been a lack of capability, or we would not find ourselves in this fix.
Right.
So, I'm not questioning anything that you say. I'm questioning what's to keep this from happening again. If the compliance or whatever we say is not there. And that's my concern. That's the only concern I have. And I don't think people in 2024 need to be punished for neglect that happened in 1950.
Right.
I'm not trying to be negative. It's just when I look at the reports and when I look at the statements that are coming about, it's really.
Yeah, there are challenges. I mean, I'll give you an example. So I worked for the largest water wastewater utility in the country for 33 years, and we had violations and compliance issues. This year, Pritchard, in their consumer confidence report, had more violations within Pritchard and Chickasaw than the largest company in the country had for across 14 million people. And that's what we have to change a culture, and we have to get the expertise in here to avoid that happening again.
I'll make my recommendations to you.
Okay.
There has to be a new way of getting a board.
Amen. I agree. To add to what Dr. Morris is saying, I think that the other part to this is us being able to build capacity and having funding for that. And so that's another piece that we need to go back and look at and put into the plan. And then, as she said, that, you know, people here in 2024 seem to be paying for, you know, situations from 1950 or neglect or however you want to call it. The same thing applies going forward. We need to make this decision based on the fact that 20, 30 years from now, somebody is going to have to live with the repercussions of the decision that we make. And it's not just for the water system, but also for this community, for the city, for the county, really. So we need to look at it from that perspective, and I feel like we're looking at this situation based on what's going on right now and the conditions that we have right now and how we are going to address right now, which we need to, but we also need to look at how does that decision affect 20 or 30 years from now?
Well, I understand that the asset management report, the source supply report, looked 20, 30 years ahead. So both of those reports have projected capital needs and source supply timing that goes that far in the future. Now,
as it relates to the water utility,
right, and
not as it relates to community development, or you understand what I mean?
well,
Right.
I mean, clearly there's things specific to Pritchard, but in general, if you have a reliable, high-quality utility, which we've defined what that's going to take moving forward with the other reports, then you can attract growth within the system. Yeah. Okay.
Mr. John, I think what is going on, the citizens of Pritchard is looking for relief now. You know, what has happened 50 years ago has happened. We are getting the benefit of that failure. Okay, but right now, the young lady that spoke, she's got a $900 water bill. She's looking for some form of relief now. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, we can't dance with the same dancers. We got to get some more dancers on board that is going to see. We don't need to be in here talking about friendship, kinship, and membership. We're talking about leadership, who is going to take this ship forward. We are all in distress now. And the way that, and we work the street. We work the street, eyeball to eyeball, face to face with people. And their main concern right now is the relief that they get any form of relief in the high water bills that they are paying now. Will she have to pay that $900 water bill now, or it could be whatever, and you got a system built in or something to work this out? Now, we all sitting around this table that live in Pritchard and know about Pritchard. We don't have that system in place now. So what we're here is to try, and the citizens want, and you as the receiver to lead us and get us in that direction as to what you are doing right now that is going to take us there.
Yeah, and
because we know what's done happen.
And that's why this is a short term. That's why this customer assistance program, getting it in place as soon as possible and properly funded, is absolutely critical in the short term. Yeah.
Nope, that was my
Yeah.
last slide.
Get one more slide.
Yeah, those were the last slide. We've already kind of talked about the next step. So I just want to say thank you all for letting us, be part of your community and presenting today. And so we know we got our work cut out for the next couple of weeks to get the report done. So thank you.
And the one thing both of us tried to do as we worked on this criteria, right now, we're Switzerland. We're very neutral. We have not dived into the alternative analysis. So this criteria that we put up here will not, we know it's not prejudicing anybody right now. It's if we were to look at the situation, how would we do it? Now we're going to do the deeper dive and get into the alternatives and subjectively and objectively and quantifiably determine which one is better. But up to this point, all we've been doing is trying to determine which alternatives to look at. Now we get into assessing them.
And I'm going to assume that as we do that first step, we're just going to have the positives and the negatives of each one of those, and then it doesn't matter whether it fits this situation. We're talking about all public water and sewer systems. Is it better to have this than that?
Mm-hmm.
Or is this superior to that?
Right. A comparison of the alternatives,
And
right.
that's what I'm
Yeah.
assuming we're going to have.
Yep.
It doesn't necessarily mean I know that whatever is the best that comes out of that is going to be any kind of way possible.
You're
And that's what's.
You're absolutely right. And that's the frustrating part of this. We could pick the absolute best alternative, but when we actually go and do the next step, which is a TMF capacity analysis, recognize that the past sins are going to have problems making this affordable and sustainable. And I'm just being honest and frank with you guys.
So John, this is, I think, on the agenda, our feedback. I think from a criteria perspective, you got the majority of that target hit. I think our public wants safety as the first criteria. It wants the lowest rates, our second criteria. Third is they want a reputable management team that can't replace the past, but make sure it doesn't happen again going forward. And then the negative community impact would lose control or ownership or whatever those are. When you look at the three alternatives, Moz is likely to score really high on safety, since they're doing that pretty well right now, and admirable rates. They're charging us for water. They've got a big scale and scope with management team, and their community is happy. Would probably upset their community if they had to fund some of the cost here. But if Moz isn't willing or wanting to do this, what happens when the criteria falls out in a theoretical basis that says Moz takes this over, but Moz doesn't want to take it over? Does that just move off to the right?
Yeah, you can only evaluate feasible alternatives.
Right, but it's on the list now, but you started the meeting with that may not be a feasible.
It may not be. At the end of the day, there may only be one or two alternatives.
Okay. So when does Moz make a decision? Whether
So there's a lot of things going on behind the scenes. So Moz,
6 weeks left.
I know that better than anybody. So Moz has several concerns. One of which is they want to make sure that whatever they do does not have a negative impact on their existing customer base. Okay? They don't want their existing customers to be paying for the improvements at Pritchard. So they're talking about how do we structure this in ownership? Is it two separate entities? And all that. Plus, they want to get the lowest cost of capital, and they recognize the challenges of rates here and funding these capital programs. So they don't want to sign up for this and know they're going to fail because rates have to be too high. So they're out there, they want to know, how do I get the lowest cost of capital? Can I get the most grant money? What commitment can I get from EPA or ADEM before I raise my hand and say, I'm willing to be part of the solution? Because if I was in their shoes, I'd do the same things. They don't want to be part of a solution that has very little chance of succeeding.
So to Dr. Morris's point, they have the grant writer capability. They have the economy of scale when they add our customer base. If we were to go this route, they'll get absorption or synergies, lowering their costs, that they could use that savings to pass back to us to cover some of our costs. They have excess equipment, capacity, whatever those things are. So do you feel like we're going to get an answer, a response back from them before we need to go to the court, or we're probably not?
We're going to have to get an answer one way or the other before. I mean, you can't stay neutral to this. The other thing they have is they have the reputation. And so the biggest thing when you go looking for low interest money and grant money is what your history has been. And they have a very good reputation there.
So the question, do you think they're going to give us an answer other than no in the next 5 to 6 weeks?
I don't know. And there's a lot of work going on behind the scenes to try to force that answer.
Yeah, it would be helpful to have that answer be forced, whatever the answer is.
Well, you can only have the answer before. If I don't get an answer before, they're going to drop off.
Yes, they won't stay on the list.
Yeah, they won't stay on the list.
I know, but life changes and options change, and so as we pursue whatever
Well-
option we go with, some things can change in the future.
I don't want to tell you what the courts and the ADEM will say, but let's say by the end of July, the water board with a concession is the only game in town. And I submit that as my recommendation because it's the only game in town. The judge and ADEM could come back to me and say, that's not good enough.
More options.
Yeah,
That's my point.
yeah, absolutely they could say that.
All right, so you were the lead in trying to get an answer from them.
Yeah, there's some work going on behind the scenes there. Any other questions regarding this? Yes.
A statement, John, to make, because we've been in this for a long time.
Mhm.
And now, Mars decided twice that they were going to take over the Pritchard and water utility. And each time that they decided to take it over, the board that was present at the time came up with something that Mars felt that they could not deal with.
Right. Right.
And one of it was when they took up that $32 million contract with Servant Trent. So if you're wondering why Mars is pausing and taking its time, because they have been burned before. And those are the experiences that we've had here with the present boards in terms of at the last minute, they pull a rabbit out the hat. That's why I said we got to look at the elephant that's in the room and deal with that elephant. So that's what we're
You want me to
doing.
do
That's why
both?
those people are
Do I have time to do both, or you just want me to do the Tony thing?
taking a pause and taking a look
Tony?
at the whole situation. Hopefully, that they will make that decision to take it. But they got to evaluate.
Okay, so this is on the website. Go back and take a look at it. And I'm saying this to everybody because we do have under fixpritchardwater.com, there's a place to put comments. So you can go to the website, look at the presentation, and anybody in the community can make a comment on the evaluation criteria, the options, anything. And we will look at, believe me, I look at every one of them. Any comment that's made goes directly to me, and I get a chance to look at it. Okay, I have one other item I want to talk about today, and it's a sad item. I hate to say this. So, under ADEM's regulations, we're required to have licensed operators on our water system and on our wastewater system. And we have one licensed operator for our water system and one licensed operator for our wastewater system. About 2 weeks ago, I found out that in our February report, and I'm a little disappointed that I didn't find out about it until 10 days ago, I found that our licensed water operator falsified and fabricated some numbers on that report. that is just, to me, that's just totally unacceptable. We've gone through the process, and we've terminated our licensed water operator, and I'm right now trying to find another operator. I'm not looking for any action from this group, but you may hear about it within the community, and I'm just telling you what happened. A little bit more detail. There was some confusion in communication about who was taking samples. So for the last couple of weeks in February and the first couple of weeks in March, the chlorine samples we were supposed to take were not done. And so when the licensed operator submitted the February report, they just made up the numbers and put them in there. In the March report, they came to us and we said, listen, we forgot to do the samples. Don't make up numbers. Just tell the state that we forgot to take samples. But unfortunately, the February report had already been submitted with the false numbers in there. I just can't tolerate that. And so we had to get rid of our, and I don't know if there's a history of this going before me or what, but anyway, so that's what we're doing. So I'm looking around to who I can find. It's unlikely we're going to be able to hire somebody, so I'm probably going to have to go under contract to get the licensed operator. But again, being totally transparent, I just wanted to tell you kind of what's going on, and it's kind of a sad day when those things go on.
For information only.
On information only. No action is required. Okay, so the next item is, you see the task ahead of us, and Rusty, you've emphasized many times we got 6 weeks to do a lot of work. And I say we to do a lot of work. I would suspect that and Moonshot Mission has 3 to 4 weeks to do their job. Maybe in a couple weeks they're going to be a little bit further along in this evaluation criteria. Would it be valuable for us to have an interim meeting before the next meeting, or so you can actually see what's going on with this evaluation? Or do we just simply keep the meeting date where it is, and Moonshot comes back and does their whole presentation and what they're going to ultimately give me, and I'll be working with them all along, so there's not going to be a surprise to me what they produce. And you guys just want to see the results. And we'll do it any way that you want to do it. We can have a meeting in 2 weeks and have a kind of an early look at the evaluation criteria, or have a meeting in a month and you'll see the final criteria.
Well, let me just clarify.
Yeah.
Our standard meeting structure is every Thursday, third Thursday of every month. So that would be July the 18th. So for the advisory council, what John's proposing is some of the content's going to start rolling out in about 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So that would put us right around July the 11th, July 10th time frame, taking into account July the 4th. So the question on the floor here is, do you want to meet, or do you want to wait until the 18th to get that content? Because he needs to get some feedback on some of that content from the advisory council for his report. Ultimately, it's going to be delivered
Right.
less than
And
6 days later.
Right, and remember, on the 18th, then I have to start rocking and rolling. But I have between the 18th and the end of the month to pull everything together. So by the 18th, we kind of have to have some sort of consensus if we can get there. Rusty?
So a suggestion, it was a long time ago, it seems like now, that first meeting was WebEx. And so maybe we just have the board have a WebEx in a couple weeks when you've got status. That way, people who can't make it, like today, we didn't have a good turnout.
Right.
From the board, they can at least call in. And then we get that information flowing before we have a real decision point. On the 18th would be my suggestion. I know a couple of people have said how hard it is to get to meetings. I've tried to be here at every one of them. And I know that it doesn't look like everyone's able to make it, so that's my recommendation.
Yeah, and the other thing I would like to do, if we do what you're recommending, Rusty,
My recommendation, to be clear, was to have a WebEx in a couple weeks where we all dial in, like we did that first meeting when we didn't know each other, so we can at least get some data points and be able to ask questions of each other, instead of getting it all on the 18th all at once.
with the idea that I would try to get you something a couple of days before that so you can actually read some stuff, if possible.
I just don't think there's value in waiting for make sure that information 30 days from now, we can have some solution. But I don't know that we necessarily all have to see each other to do it if we're able to get
So I guess I'll ask the question to Moonshot. You guys are going to produce something, and I'll be working with you, but you think you can get something to us for 10 days or 2 weeks that I can get out to the group to look at? Yeah.
That'd be 10 days.
Well, why don't you do this? Why don't you go back and look at your schedule and see when you could get something that has some meaning?
Yeah, that's what I want to make sure. I wouldn't want to convene the group if we were still in the middle of our analysis.
I'm looking for feedback to see if you guys like that or not. It's just
I
one
like
person.
the idea, but I do like the better idea that we have those data before.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I certainly think that with technology, you could just tell us when you got it, and then call a meeting.
Yeah.
24, 48 hours later.
Yeah.
28,
And the best thing maybe to do this in this draft is do many bullets as possible, so you don't have to read a whole lot of text. We just have numbers and yeses and nos and things like that to make it as easy to everybody as possible. Okay.
The tenor of this extra meeting is really more of a workshop versus a report out, so it's that kind of thing.
Yeah, we're only going to have one topic for this workshop, and that's to get feedback on the evaluation.
What's the council that's present sense on doing something virtual? Zoom, WebEx, whatever. Let me put it another way. Anybody negative about it? Okay.
Only the people that aren't here are negative.
They might be listening on live stream.
And at that meeting, we'll try to give you an update on where Moz stands.
Yeah, any updates?
And things like that.
Flooded with all the information
Yeah.
on the 18th.
Yeah.
Bring some portion of that up to that point.
Yeah.
Allows us to vector or change direction if necessary.
So John, you're going to confer with Moonshot.
Yeah.
That'll be a trigger point. We'll get a note out to our team and let them know. Great. I think that covers anything, except for item 6, were there any, I didn't hear any, other than the action items that are obvious, anything that we need to do that's actionable.
No.
Anything?
We just have a ton of work we got to get done very quickly.
Okay.
The thing, only thing you mentioned, there's a couple of us that pseudo volunteered to go raise money for covering bills like
Yeah.
this lady's and
Yeah.
others that are out there. I'm assuming you're going to resolve issues like you normally do with the customer base, hopefully as favorable as possible to the community. But that group isn't moving forward yet, so we know the path that we're going to go because it changes the ask. At least it does in my mind. So going to the philanthropy route versus the large company route, their first question, if I'm them, is what's your plan? And our plan can't be, well, we're coming up with a plan on the 18th and submitting it.
Yeah.
So
But we don't have a deadline on that. That can go well beyond
and
the
I think
31st.
they need to, what's our recommended?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I think it'll make it easier to be able to get the most amount of funds.
Yeah.
Hopefully we get some on a recurring basis to help with that solution. But if it's, depending on what it is, it just allows us to ask harder for that money. I don't know, Arletta, you had any other opinion on that? I know your name was thrown around on that, my name was thrown around, Chris's name was thrown around on that.
Well, I got an opinion on it. When you get to the-
Yeah, so those who volunteer, if you didn't volunteer and you want to go ask for money, that's great on the board, but this opinion is that we should go make those asks when we're a little further down the line on the plan.
Yeah. Well, I think that's appropriate. If I was given money, I want to know who's shepherding that money.
So from an action perspective, we haven't made action because
Yeah.
that would be opinion.
Yeah. The only
Opinion, ma'am?
No, I think that is my opinion. My opinion, along with a lot of citizens, is that who's going to be handling that money?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, I
the
don't
main
think
thing.
anyone on
If you
this
go
board
out
will
and you
handle
get
it.
the money, and you get a large company to volunteer to give something, then who's going to be in charge of that money?
Yeah.
Who's going to handle it?
It can't be any of us from a controls or regulatory, it will have to go back up.
well, I
Most people who donate money will put regulations on how the
yeah.
program's gonna be spent.
So, and one of the evaluation criteria is, for instance, I know Moz has a consumer assistance program. I know within the concession they're proposing that. So we're going to be assessing both of those as part of the overall evaluation.
Creating a new trail. There's a lot of water companies that already have processes and procedures
you go out tomorrow, you know, maybe you're talking long range, I don't know, and I would fully understand. But if you go out tomorrow and some companies say, okay, I'm going to contribute such and such, then that money is going to come with the receiver, Mr. John, as he's in charge now. Will he be over it, or who would be over it? We are concerned, it's not that money don't come into the city of, to the Pritchard Water and Sewer Board at some time, but what happens to the money? The citizens are not benefited by the money. How is she going to get relief today or tomorrow in regards to that $900 water bill? So when you go out, this is my main concern, that you can go out and you can solicit and you can get this money. But who is going to be in charge and accountable for the money whenever you get it, whether it's tomorrow, right now, we don't have,
Yeah.
Mr. John is over.
Well, we've talked to several local nonprofit organizations. I'm not sure they want me to tell you which one they are right now, although it's no big secret. They would help administer, they don't help administer the program, because you have to get access to the program, you have to submit financial qualification information and all of that. And it's best that's not done by the utility. It's better done by a nonprofit community group. And so we've been talking about two of them about, do they have the resources to administer a program? And we're trying to get feedback from them.
But the takeaway here is what Rusty's talking about, the timing.
Right,
So
right.
it can go past it.
It can certainly go past it. And in fact, it sounds like it's best that it goes past it. Yeah.
Well, with that, we'll conclude our meeting. Thank you for your attendance.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. And I would encourage you to go to fixpritchardwater.com. Everything you've seen here is up there, as well as everything that's been conducted for the last, all